In the Philippines, Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines is the largest aggregation of private schools in the entire country. It has many famous schools. CEAP is really not just these big, well-known schools. Of the 1,500 schools, perhaps only 600 might be considered big or successful. The large number of them, 900 of them, are struggling small schools, many of them in far-off, remote places, providing private quality education to the poor, to those who do not have easy access to public schools or who do not have easy access otherwise to quality education.
A mission school does not work for profit. It does not work for accumulation of resources, but on serving the community.
A mission school is much appreciated in the mission area because many people could not afford to send their children to the nearby cities, especially that there is no catechetical instructions given to the public elementary and public high schools.
The mission school is very much important here. We're very lucky to have this mission school. Because of this mission school, education came into our lives.
Christian formation is a way of life. It is our way of telling students that Christ is present in each one of us.
The Kapatirang Kamagong is a project of CEAP. This year, we're launching it. We want people to be aware that our small mission schools need more support in terms of materials, logistics, scholarship for students, training for teachers, new buildings. We try to bring more people to support our institutions who need them.
The Kapatirang Kamagong is a project that desires to help the 900 schools that are not well off, that are struggling to exist, that are doing heroic work often in very remote places, but because they are serving the poor, do not really have the resources to sustain their operations.
Good education is not just an advocacy for some. It must be everybody's concern.
As we serve the community, we try to empower the poor because we believe that education is the only way you can bring about change in society.
Catholic education means you are guided by the word of the Lord.
Through education, we seek to be able to share deeply the values of the gospel, the values, therefore, of the Catholic Church.
Mabuhay at magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. I would like to welcome you all, our dear CEAP members schools and partners in education all over the Philippines. I'm Allan Arellano. I'm the CEAP Executive Director, and I will be moderating today's session. This is the 8th session in our third CEAP webinar series. Last Tuesday, we had a talk on igniting the spark of parent involvement in faith formation of the young people. A lot of people messaged us, thanking us, that they really enjoyed and were touched by the said webinar. Maraming salamat po sa inyong feedback. Today, we will focus on the governance of schools as corporate institutions. Before we continue, let us begin our webinar with an opening prayer. Let us remember that we are in the holy presence of God. Please bow your heads and pray with me. Sa ngalan ng Ama, ng Anak, ng Espiritu Santo. Amen. Mapagmahal na Ama, salamat sa pag-akay mo sa aming lahat sa isa na namang magandang umaga. Sa pagsisimula namin sa webinar na ito, nananalangin kami ipadala mo ang iyong banal na Espiritu upang ang lahat ng kaganapan ngayon ay magsisimula sa isang butihing pagpapala. Basbasan mo ang aming panauhin, gabayan mo siya upang maging malinaw ang kanyang pagpapresenta sa amin sa ikabubuti ng aming mga paaralan. Basbasan mo rin ang mga sumusubaybay sa amin ngayon. Buksan mo ang aming mga puso at isipan upang tanggapin ang mga aral na ipinadala mo sa pamamagitan ng aming tagapagsalita para kami ay lubusang maging tapat at matatag na gampanan ang aming bahagi bilang mga tagapagpaganap ng misyon ng simbahan, ng pamayan ng Kristiyano at ng mga paaralan. Hilubin mo, Panginoon, ang may COVID at pagalingin mo ang aming bayan at ang sangkatauhan sa pandemyang ito. Hinihiling namin ito sa ngalan ng Jesucristo ang aming Panginoon at tagapagligtas, sa ngalan ng Ama, ng Anak, ng Espiritu Santo. Amen. Magandang umaga po muli sa inyong lahat. For those who have just tuned in with us, we welcome you to the 8th session in the third leg of our CEAP Webinar series. Today, we are using two platforms in giving you this webinar. We are on YouTube, the CEAP channel, and the CEAP FB page. We ask you then to like this webinar by pressing the thumbs up button below. Yan, makikita nyo sa ilalim. And subscribe to our YouTube channel now, please. Okay? Press the red button now so that you'll be informed of all the webinars that we'll be having, including our big CEAP 2020 Congress in September. So subscribe now. Now, for our reminders, first, as the talk is ongoing, we encourage you to post your questions or comments at the comment section of this YouTube page. And we will ask these questions or read the comments during the Q&A portion. Second, etong madalas yung mga tanong, certificates. We have been getting a lot of queries about the certificates. Please be informed that you will receive the certificate of attendance only upon completion of the evaluation form. The link has already been posted as part of the description of this video and in your Facebook page. But the link will go live only from 11:30 a.m. until 2 p.m. today. So if you click it now, it's not going to open. We encourage you to answer the evaluation form and you will receive your certificate of attendance within the next few days, 3 to 5 days. Finally, please be reminded as well that this is a free webinar brought to you in partnership with Cliffs Publishing Incorporated. If you are being asked for credit card or bank details to register, that is not from CEAP. We're giving this to you for free. But if you want to pay it forward, you may donate to our Kapatirang Kabagong Fund. You watched the video earlier. It is our fund for helping the poor and struggling CEAP mission schools because we heal as one. Lastly, we encourage you to share this webinar to your networks with hashtags #CEAP Cares and hashtag I love Catholic Ed. Let me now introduce our session. With the concerns brought about by the pandemic, many of our institutions are grappling with the issues of complying with regular government requirements and at the same time surviving the effects of the economic downtrend and making schools stay afloat. Today's webinar hopefully clarifies some of the major issues that our school heads want to ask our corporate regulators. Our speaker is a lawyer and a graduate of the Ateneo de Manila School of Law. He was appointed Securities and Exchange Commission, a commissioner on January 25, 2019. As SEC commissioner, he is the chairman of the Task Force on Ease of Doing Business, Protecting Minority Investor, and the co-chairperson of the SEC committee to operationalize the revised corporation code provisions. Prior to joining the commission, he was an assistant secretary in the Office of the Executive Secretary of the Office of the President, where he was also designated to sit on the board of Subic Bay Metropolitan Authority, or SBMA. Before entering government service, Attorney Lee practiced law in Davao and Manila. He began his legal career as an associate lawyer of the Sigyon Reyna Montesillo and Ongshoco Law Office. He was also an opinion and legal columnist of the Sun Star Davao newspaper. He currently writes a business law column for the Manila Times. Without further ado, let us welcome SEC Commissioner Attorney Kelvin Lester K. Lee. Palakpakan natin si Attorney Lee.
Thank you, Allan, for that very kind introduction. So we have a fairly extensive discussion today, so let me get to it. No? So, ladies and gentlemen of the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines, to Father Elmer Dizon, CEAP President, to the CEAP Board of Directors and Trustees, special mention also to the members of CEAP who are from Ateneo de Davao. This is where I took up my elementary school, no? And to those from Ateneo de Manila, where I went to college and law school from. Oh, and also a quick shout out, what my kids call a shout out, to those who are watching from Immaculate Conception Academy in Green Hills, ICA in Green Hills, which is where my kids go to now. In particular, they asked me to give a quick greeting to Madame Shirley Tan, who is their grade school principal. They specifically requested me to give a quick shout out to her. Also to friends, participants, and also to Attorney Faye Rizonar Bello, who was the one who invited me initially to attend this and to give this talk. So good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Securities and Exchange Commission, allow me to extend my heartfelt greetings to the entire CEAP. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be here to speak, despite the COVID pandemic, to speak about the corporate responsibilities for schools as a general rule. No, not just for Catholic schools, but for schools as a general rule. But I understand that this is something we should be discussing, especially in these trying times. I laud the CEAP for coming up with this idea in order to inculcate valuable knowledge and information to your members. Next slide, please. Now, in order to give you a better idea of what the SEC does, why we can mandate different corporate responsibilities, such as the reportorial requirements, as your regulator. The SEC is one of your regulators, by the way, not just us, but there's also others like the CHED, I believe, and DepEd. But general, as to the corporate side of things, whether you're a foundation or an actual stock corporation, you fall under us. No? So I thought it'd be a good idea to give you a general idea of what is the SEC na lang din. So kumbaga, we're starting from scratch in a way, the mandate and functions of the SEC. And then I thought we'd talk about the revised corporation code, which is in effect, to contextualize it. The revised corporation code is the law na parang Bible ng SEC. That's what we follow, and that's what we implement and use. And then finally, we'll talk about the incorporation and post-incorporation requirements for schools. Now, whether you incorporate and operate as a foundation or as a stock corporation. Okay, so that's the general outline of how I'll discuss it this morning. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. Next slide, please. Now, so let's get to it. The Securities and Exchange Commission. Who are we? Now, it is the national government regulatory agency. We are charged with supervision over the corporate market, the corporate sector, the capital. Are not aware of. We are also the ones, the investor protection champions. We try to make sure that Ponzi schemes, scams that claim to be investments are shut down. And we do have a fair amount of those. As I was telling sila Alan earlier, we've actually that has actually caused me to get some odd death threats before, along with our chairman and the other commissioners. Yung the enforcement side of things, in protecting the investing public. You'd be surprised how a relatively what I thought would be a quiet corporate job, even in government, turned out to be so exciting, so to speak. But anyway, the SEC was created way back in 1936. So this is one of the older government agencies, it turns out, under the Securities Act. No, the commission back then was tasked to regulate the sale and registration of securities. When I talk about securities, I'm referring to stocks, and other capital market instruments, so bonds, things like that. Very, very technical, no? But kumbaga, we are not just the ones who register corporations. We have a different function as well in relation to the capital markets. We also handle private corporations, enterprises, things like that. Now, recently enacted laws like the Securities Regulation Code, the Revised Corporation Code, have given the Commission greater focus to refocus now on the corporate and capital market side. So next slide, please. So these are the two main things. Now, to simplify it, there are two main things that we really do. One is the corporate, as we are the company registrar, and second is we are the securities regulator. What's a company registrar? Well, that's the side I think that most people see of the SEC. We're the ones that incorporate. We allow you, we are the first step if you want to open a business, to whether you want to be a corporation or even a one-person corporation, the new thing now under the Revised Corporation Code, a partnership, a foundation, stock, non-stock corporation. You have to go through us and apply with us. And then we register with us. And then we are a securities regulator as well, which handles as I mentioned, the capital markets, the stock market. So mga IPOs, things like that, the Mary Mart thing, I don't know if you've heard about the REIT, which is launching today as well, of Ayala. All those, before they can be sent to the public and issued to the public, have to apply with us, because we have to check whether they're legitimate, things like that, whether they meet all the requirements. Now, we are unique in the world because we're one of the few SECs that does these two functions. Other countries, they divide the functions. For instance, in Australia, hati po yan, there's a separate government agency that handles government securities regulation. There's a separate government agency that handles company registration. Same in Singapore, separate as well. In the US as well, my understanding is it's separate. So the fact that here in the Philippines, combine the two functions has made us a very interesting combination of two what could be considered disparate functions. But so far we have been managing. It's difficult lang. It's been a challenge, admittedly. But I'd like to think we're doing well. Next slide, please. So our mission, vision, core values, SEC quality policy statement. This is fairly basic. So next slide, please. I'll just go through it very quickly. So our mission is that we want to be the gateway for doing business in the Philippines, provide a competitive and secure environment for easy company registration, efficient capital formation, and broad investor participation. We want to make things easier for everyone to be able to create a business, easier for you to go into the capital market, yung mga stock market, and safer and broader investor participation. Everyone can invest in the capital markets. No? Next slide, please. Our vision. By 2025, and the reason it's 2025 is because that is by the end of the term of our current chairman. So we're trying to move things forward by that time. No? The SEC, with its driven, highly trained, and customer-centric team of professionals equipped with innovative technology, registration data management systems, would be the premier investor champion and catalyst of a broadened and informed investor-based capital market and business sector, considered among the best in the Southeast Asian region. Long term, no, but bottom line is we want to do well, we want to be good and be the best for our investing public, for the general people out there. Next slide, please. The core values of the SEC: integrity, professionalism, accountability, teamwork, and independence. I won't really explain that masyado because that's fairly obvious, but I like to point out that what is very important to us among these values in particular is integrity. We are ethical, honest, fair, and sincere in our private and public lives. And I think you will notice that among many government agencies, we have a reputation to be one of the more expert ones, no? So to speak. We are the more ones with more integrity. At least I want to think that as well. No? Next is professionalism. We're capable and competent in performing our mandate. We excel in our fields of expertise, and we perform and possess high ethical principles and standards, which are essential in providing timely, quality, and committed public service. Yeah. So next, the SEC quality statement. Next slide, please. Sorry, there. That's the quality policy statement. That's fairly basic as well. The Securities Exchange Commission would be the prudent registrar and supervisor of the corporate sector, independent guardian of the capital market. We commit to serve our stakeholders with integrity. It's all there. We excel in performing our mandate, and we continuously improve our quality management system. Next slide, please. Now, just show you our organizational chart. So we have, I'm over there with the Office of the Commissioners. No? I'm one of the 5 commissioners. Just to give you an idea how it works, we are a collegial body. So what does that mean? There's 5 of us, 4 commissioners, 1 chairman, and we make decisions as a body. No? So we meet twice a week and we discuss the many different things that are up for consideration. And these are the departments that discuss it with us. No? The directors of each of these departments discuss it with us, and then we make a decision as a body. So that's our current setup. Now, in particular for schools, for Catholic schools and foundations, what will be of interest to you would be the 2 departments. I'll just mention them. The Company Registration and Monitoring Department, because that is the department that will incorporate you and also monitor you as a corporation later on. And I'll point out as well the Corporate Governance and Finance Department. That naman is the department that handles specifically foundations. Now, I'd also like to point out the EIPD, the Enforcement and Investor Protection Department. That is the department that takes care of, that is supposed to be our enforcement arm, that tries to make sure that no scams and schemes are being done in relation to the investing public. So they investigate, in short, they investigate violations of the SEC's laws, rules, and regulations, among others. So next slide, please. We'll move now to the Revised Corporation Code. So that's the Revised Corporation Code. The Revised Corporation Code was signed into law by the President just last year, in Malacanang, Feb 2019. As an aside, I was lucky enough to be in Malacanang now as an SEC commissioner, not just as an ASEC, to witness the President signing that into law. Sadly, I'm not in the picture because at the time I was one of the more junior commissioners, because there's 5 and there's not much space. So I like to believe that. So our 2 most senior commissioners are there on the right side of the picture. The chairman was abroad at the time, so sadly he couldn't join as well. But anyway, I like to think that had there been enough space, I'd be over there on the right side. Isingit na lang sana. I really should get around to just putting my face there somehow. So to have a picture on that very historic occasion. Now, anyway, as early the law was published, became effective on Feb 23, 2019. And as early as the 15th and 16th Congress, there was already an intention to initiate reform measures through amendments of the Corporation Code. That's supposed to advance the business climate, improve the ease of doing business in our country, encourage more investments. And there were also many multiple corporate governance changes that were being included in that draft of the code at the time. And the changes were so many, so substantial, it was decided that instead of just having amendments to the Corporation Code, Congress and the senators in the Congress decided instead to have a whole new Corporation Code, what we call now the Revised Corporation Code. Now, question, is the Revised Corporation Code self-executing? Yes, the intent of the legislators now is that it is self-executing, meaning we don't have to come up with implementing rules of regulations. However, there is a need for us to operationalize, meaning how to operationalize some of the provisions of the Revised Corporation Code, how to make it happen on a day-to-day basis. So we are supposed to issue memorandum circulars to that effect. And most of these separate memorandum circulars are on our website. Allow me very quickly to pitch our website at www.sec.gov.ph. In case you have questions or queries or clarifications, a lot of our notices and memorandum circulars, a lot of our laws and our rules are there on the website. We also have a lot of advisories, meaning we warn you which investments are scams. We tell you which ones are violators of law. So I strongly encourage everyone to take a look at our website. So anyway, next slide, please. In line with the need to issue memorandum circulars to operationalize the Revised Corporation Code, we issued the SEC Resolution number 155. Now, in February 26, 2019, it's constituted a committee to draft memorandum circulars. Okay, so this is co-chaired by Commissioner J.V. Francisco, who's also from Davao, like me, and myself. And once again, the function is to create memorandum circulars to operationalize the revised corporation code. Next slide, please. So the next slide points out some of the some of the revised corporation code provisions. I won't discuss all, because the revised corporation code is a very lengthy law, and there really were a lot of changes made. So, and I give lectures on the revised corporation law, and usually that's a 2-3 hour lecture. That would be too long for our purposes today. So I'll just focus on those provisions and the applicable memorandum circulars that would apply to schools. Or that may be of interest to school, even if it doesn't necessarily apply. So, and some of these would be the Section 11, Section 4952 on directors and stockholders being allowed now to do remote communication meetings, meaning virtual meetings. Section 177, which are reportorial requirements, also discuss the powers, functions of the commission, and the monitoring. Next slide, please. And the monitoring. The development and implementation of electronic filing and monitoring system. Okay, this is Section 180 in particular was what authorized the SEC to issue very many memorandum circulars in relation to digital transformation. We're making very many changes right now, actually, because of the times of COVID and the need for us to become more digital. Anyway, next slide, please. Perpetual term. So it talks about the corporation's perpetual term under Section 11 of the Revised Corporation Code. Section 11 states that the corporation shall have perpetual existence unless its articles of incorporation provide otherwise. So what does this mean? This means that a corporation can now exist beyond the 50-year term. If you will recall, in the past, corporations used to have a 50-year lifespan, and then you would have to amend your articles to extend again. Currently, the provision in law states that corporations now with certificates of incorporation issued prior to the effectivity of the revised corporation code, meaning old corporations that were created before 2019 and which continue to exist now, which are still validly existing, now have perpetual existence. They are now forever, ladies and gentlemen. So all of you, presuming you have no issues with your incorporation papers, can now be considered perpetual corporations, forever na po yung lifespan. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is my running joke. Love may not be forever, but now corporations are literally forever. But don't tell my wife I said that. She would not be happy to hear me saying that. Now, an exception, however, to the perpetual rule, meaning how a corporation is not perpetual, is when a corporation chooses and elects to still have a term. That is within the powers of the corporation. That is within the choice of the board of directors or trustees. So kumbaga, the law now is saying that all corporations moving forward, even past corporations that are existing, forever na kayo, you're all perpetual. But just in case the corporation chooses not to be perpetual, they don't want to be forever, then you simply inform us at the commission. We have a memorandum circular to that effect where there's a form that you follow. It's on the website once again. So you can inform us that you don't want to be perpetual. That's fine. You just have to inform us within 2 years from the incorporation. Within 2 years from the effectivity of the revised corporation code. So you have to inform us deadline is around Feb 2021, end of Feb, because 2 years nga, the transitory provision. So there. But like I said, but in my head, personally, I'm not so sure why you would want a shorter term. I don't quite see the advantage personally, not unless there are other laws that apply to you that would say, you're better off with a shortened term, Kasi being forever, you have less possibilities of having problems later on. Meaning you don't have to extend your term anymore, less paperwork later on. But like I said, it depends on what the board wishes. So of course, I'll defer to the wishes of whatever you may want to do. But to let everyone know, forever na po kayo as a corporation. Next slide, please. There, I just like to point out Memorandum Circular number 23, 2019. Now, these are guidelines for the revival of expired corporations, pursuant to Section 11 of the Revised Corporation Code. This took effect last year lang, December last year. Essentially, it says that for particular corporations that have expired terms or that were revoked due to non-filing of reports, you can still revive your corporation. You just have to follow the procedures there. And when you follow the procedures of MC23 and you are revived by the commission, you would be revived, you would be alive again as a corporation. And once you are revived, you would have forever term, perpetual ka na naman. Not unless, again, you tell us otherwise. So this is the format of how you follow that, Memorandum Circular number 23, series of 2019. Now, take note that this doesn't apply to particular corporations who are not existing, those that have completed the liquidation of assets, those who were revoked, the corporation was revoked because of other reasons like fraud, no? Because there are some, it is within the power of the SEC to revoke particular corporations. And if it's one of those corporations that were revoked because of fraud, malice, things like that, then you would not fall under this, okay? And also, this also doesn't apply to those that have availed of re-registration. Okay, so anyway, the provisions are all there, okay? Next slide, please. Here, meetings. So the next provision pertains to the participation of stockholders in the respective meetings. Now, there are two ways usually you have meetings as a corporation: the stockholders, also known as the members, or the directors or trustees. So two forms of meetings. And under Section 49 of the Revised Corporation Code, we already allow remote communication. The law already allows remote communication or meetings held in absentia. So what does this mean? Kumbaga, you can hold it like how we've been holding it now, yung mga virtual stockholders meetings, virtual board meetings. The law already provides for a way to do it. And what we did in the Revised Corporation Code, under the Revised Corporation, we issued a memorandum circular, which I'll explain later, operationalizing the procedure to do it. Now, I'd just like to point out that directors and trustees, it's still explicit under Section 52 that if they cannot physically attend the board meeting, they can participate and vote through remote communication. So that means you can still attend as a board member or a trustee through video conferencing, teleconferencing, or other modes of communication, but you cannot vote by proxy. No? Take note that directors and trustees still cannot vote by proxy, all right, in board meetings. No? Kasi nga, you are the one who, as the board member, you were voted in to represent the board, to act within the board. You can't just have someone else vote for you, no, in board meetings. It's a different story for stockholders meetings, of course. Now, I'd like to point out that Section 52 and Section 49 essentially is an adaptation of an old SEC memorandum circular that we issued way back in 2001, which is a SEC memorandum circular on teleconferencing. So, kumbaga, the law, this is one of those rare occasions where the law followed one of our guidelines. So we're very happy that they did that. The Congress followed one of our recommendations, among others. Next slide, please. So Section 52 and 58 provides for the provisions regarding meetings of directors under the law. No? So regular meetings, you're supposed to be conducted monthly, okay, unless your bylaws provide otherwise. Meanwhile, no, special meetings of directors. Take note, we're talking about directors. So also that to some of you, those of you who are foundations, that I'm referring to trustees. No? So directors, trustees. These are meetings of directors and trustees. No? So they're conducted dapat monthly by law, unless the bylaws provide otherwise. Special meetings can be called anytime upon the call of the president. Take note that now it's the president. I believe in the old provisions of the law, it was chairman. So now it's by the president or as may be provided in your bylaws, because your bylaws can provide something else. And meetings of directors or trustees of corporations can be held anywhere in or outside of the Philippines, unless, once again, your bylaws specifically provide otherwise. Because sometimes some bylaws are very specific, and they provide that you're supposed to hold your meeting in a particular place only. So we, of course, we will defer to the bylaws. Just so we're clear, bylaws are the rules and regulations of your company, and you're supposed to submit it to us during incorporation. No, but we can discuss that a little later on when we talk about your reportorial requirements for incorporation. Now, when you hold these meetings, now you should have a notice of regular or special meetings, and that should state the date, the time, and place of the meeting. And they're supposed to be sent to every director or trustee at least 2 days. So medyo nag-adjust na yung dates here, at least 2 days prior to the scheduled meeting, unless a longer time is provided in the bylaws. So your bylaws can once again state otherwise. It can be a longer period if your bylaws say so. Now, a director or trustee can waive this requirement, either expressly or impliedly. So we're giving a lot of leeway to the directors or trustees. The law provides a lot of leeway. Now, I'll re-emphasize this point. For directors or trustees who cannot physically attend or vote at board meetings, they can participate and vote through remote communication, as I mentioned earlier, through video conferencing, teleconferencing, or other alternative modes of communication that allow them reasonable opportunities to participate. But once again, directors or trustees cannot attend or vote by proxy in a board meeting. So, kumbaga, representatives are now, it's sort of like Congress where, or in the Senate where you can't vote by proxy. Personal po talaga yan when it comes to directors or trustees voting. Oh, and unless the articles of incorporation or bylaws provide for a greater majority, a majority of the board of directors or trustees, as stated in your articles, constitute already a quorum for you to conduct business. Next slide talks about the meetings of stockholders naman. Stockholders, or in the cases of foundations, we would be referring to members. Okay. So section 48 to 51 and 57 of the revised corporation code talks about the stockholders meetings. Notice may be given through any of the means of communication provided in the corporation's bylaws. So pwede na rin email in case it's provided in your bylaws. Now, under section 49, for regular meetings, the companies must notify the stockholders at least 21 days before the meeting. Once upon a time in the old code, it was 2 weeks lang for stockholders and trustees. And members meetings. Now it's a full 21 days. Now, unless a different period is required in the bylaws, laws, rules, or regulations. And this can be done through, once again, electronic mail or such other manner allowed under the law or our guidelines. Now, quick question. Is the 21-day rule specific now? Can the bylaws allow for a shorter period? Currently, we don't allow shorter periods because we issued a memorandum circular, SEC Memorandum Circular number 3 of series of 2020, which is very clear now that it should be 21 days because the law allows us, the SEC, to issue out special regulations for these situations. And we're requiring that it be 21 days because for corporate governance purposes. No, why? 21 days is more than sufficient time, and it is the industry standard in the rest of the world for you to have notice of a stockholders meeting and a members meeting. Why? To give you time not to know and adjust your schedule. No, to give time for your constituents and members to check and look at the agenda. Do they want to participate? Should they participate? And gives you an opportunity to prepare for that stockholders meeting or members meeting. Okay. Now, in this situation, for stockholders, pwede ang voting by proxy. It can be done in person or by proxy, or once again, when authorized by the bylaws or by a majority of the board through remote communication. Okay, so here, stockholders and members, pwede by proxy. Directors, trustees meetings cannot be by proxy. All right, next slide, please. Here, this is the one I was mentioning, SEC Memorandum Circular number 3. On the notice of regular meetings of stockholders or members, it took effect only this year, to February 27. As I mentioned earlier, it's based on Section 49 of the Revised Corporation Code. A written notice of regular meetings shall be sent to all stockholders, members of record, at least 21 days, at least 21 calendar days. Take note, prior to the date of the meeting. Okay. And once again, the rationale is to encourage shareholder participation and to improve our corporate governance standards consistent with international best practices. I'd like to point out that in ASEAN, the ASEAN region, which is our benchmark mostly because we try to compare ourselves to our ASEAN neighbors, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia. This is a standard that we were a little behind with actually because others already provided for a roughly 21 to 23 day notice period. So only recently nung tayo naka-follow na 21 days because the law was only enacted last year. And we issued the regular memorandum circular for that this year. Okay. So once again, 21 calendar days. Next slide, please. I'd like now to point out Memorandum Circular number 6, series to 2020. This is our operationalizing memorandum circular that allowed for remote communication, board meetings, and stockholders meetings. So what does this mean? It means now that the virtual meetings, which a lot of companies have been doing, are now allowed and operationalized under the rules provided in this memorandum circular. So Section 6, SEC Memorandum Circular number 6 provides for the guidelines on the attendance and participation of directors, trustees, stockholders, members, and other persons in the corporations in regular and special meetings through teleconferencing, video conferencing, which is what we are doing now, most of us, and other remote or electronic means of communication. So the other provisions just emphasize the point that directors and trustees can participate and vote through remote communication, but not through proxy again. I emphasize that point because that seems to pop up a lot in some of my classes and some of my discussions, whether a board member can vote by proxy. Bottom line, they cannot. So, now, I'd like to point out also that directors or trustees may issue internal procedures for the conduct of meetings through remote communication. So how you conduct your meeting, that's really up to the corporation how you want to do it. No? So you can create internal guidelines, internal procedures, which will be your quote unquote Bible for how you conduct and run your stockholders meetings or board meetings electronically. Okay. Now, note that the director or trustee present via remote communication is already considered as present in determining a quorum. And this is important considering that in times of COVID, where it's difficult to meet physically together, this is how you are able to determine a meeting. And I'd like to inform everyone that that's how we conduct our meetings currently as well at the commission. We do it by NBank through remote communication as well. And our quorum is counted through participation remotely as well, no? Through electronic means, through Zoom, like this one that we're using now, among others. Next slide, please. This one discusses the stockholders. It's essentially the same. They can participate if it's provided in the bylaws or in a resolution of the majority of board of directors. So what some companies have done, what some corporations have done this year is that they approved a method or internal guidelines or guidances for you to have stockholders meetings remotely or virtually under the memorandum circular number 6. And once again, you can vote post this one personally or through a proxy, because this one is for stockholders and members now. So this one you're allowed, so long as it's authorized in your bylaws or through your internal guidelines. Okay. Now, for corporations vested with public interest, they may vote through remote communication or even in absentia in the election of directors, trustees, and officers, so long as provided in the bylaws. Even if absent in the bylaws, actually, because it's a corporation public interest, so we give a little more priority to those. Next slide, please. Now, an important provision in this particular memorandum circular is the transitory provision, section 16, because I'm sure a lot of you don't have the appropriate internal guidelines or internal procedures for holding remote communication stockholders meetings or members meetings. So we allow the transitory provision where you can already hold meetings virtually for the sole purpose of approving your internal guidelines and internal procedures. So that you can, kumbaga, you can get the ball rolling. So to ensure that hindi kayo ma-technical in relation to the law. So in case you want to see a copy of the SEC memorandum circular itself, number 6, I recommend once again you go to the website www.sec.gov.ph. And also I'd like to, I forgot to tell Allan pala, no? Allan, in case anyone wants a copy of the slide, it's okay, of our slides, no? It's perfectly okay. My request is that it just be submitted in PDF format, no? In case anyone wants a copy. Anyway, next slide, please. Our next slide talks about the powers, functions, and jurisdiction of the SEC. So that's fairly basic because it's all in the law lang naman, no? But I just like to point out some provisions. Letter A, supervision and jurisdiction over all corporations and persons acting on their behalf. This is how you, as schools, foundations, or otherwise, fall under us because of these provisions, giving us that power. We also have the power to suspend or revoke the certificate of incorporation after proper notice and hearing. So not only are we the ones who give you the incorporation papers, we're also the ones who have the power to revoke it, no? Provided there are issues and after notice and hearing. We also have rule-making power, which is what we're exercising when we create all these rules and memorandum circulars in relation to the Revised Corporation Code. Now, I'd like to point out one more thing. TROs. Once upon a time, some lawyers and judges even were under the impression they could TRO us at any time. No? Now the current law provides that only no court below the Court of Appeals can issue restraining orders or injunctions against us. So they can't TRO us na. No, not unless the Court of Appeals are higher. I mentioned this because we've had the sad experience last year when the law was already in play, when the law was already implemented and effective, where some regional trial courts, some lower courts would still try to file and issue a TRO against us, major ignoring the law. We of course contested these TROs and we were able to get them lifted naman, no, upon appeal, so on higher courts. But gives you an idea that sometimes talaga you have to disseminate and let everyone know about the law, otherwise they would be violating or using it against us, no, or trying to purposely use it against us. So there. Next slide, please. Here, Section 180. This is referring to the development and implementation of an electronic filing and monitoring system under Section 180. Now, in line with that provision, we've already issued many COVID-19 related issuances, meaning issuances where we allow digital or electronic forms of communication and coordination with us na, in forms of different notices, memorandum circulars. We even have draft circulars, which could be helpful for you, which I'll discuss later on. Now, Section 180 of the Revised Corporation Code essentially requires that we develop and implement an electronic filing and monitoring system, which is what we're trying to do now. Even before the Revised Corporation Code, we already have an electronic filing and monitoring system called the Company Registration System. Admittedly, that has some challenges, and we're trying to fix those challenges, especially considering the company registration system was implemented and issued before the Revised Corporation Code. So it's due for changes na talaga because of it doesn't reflect the current law. No? Anyway, I'll discuss the different memorandum circulars. Sorry, the question, is online registration possible? Yes, even now during COVID, yes, it is possible. I will share a link later through Allan. We actually have online registration for the company registration system. And we also, allow me to highlight this lang, we also created a different company registration system for the one-person corporation. No? I'm sorry, I don't think that's in my slides because I neglected to put it. But I have a link which I think Allan can share to you na lang siguro later, no, if it's possible. This is a link to the one-person corporation online registration system. The one-person corporation, by the way, it's not part of the discussion because I don't think you'll use it. But just in case you want to, one-person corporations are corporations where there's a single stockholder. No, it's a new provision of the law. So kumbaga, it's like an incorporated sole proprietorship. The one-person corporation, and then we also have the 2 to 4 incorporation website, meaning if you can incorporate the corporation, even if there's only 2 incorporators, up to 4. Well, actually up to 15. No, but anyway, we created the website, and we're very proud of this because it is homegrown. No, website for one-person corporation registration of companies and for registration of companies. Even if there's only 2 to 4 incorporators. So I'll read out the link. It's an awkward link lang kasi, no? But I am proud of the fact that we created this ourselves. It was homegrown by our IT department, our Information Communication Technology department, alongside our company registration monitoring department. So it's possible naman pala, no? So kumbaga, you go to this website, you check it out. There's a link to it in our main website, www.sec.gov.ph. But allow me to read it out lang, no? Hopefully you can get it. HTTPS with the / no, and then it's apps apps 004.sec.gov.ph:8001/application. Siguro a request in case anyone's interested for Allan to include that na lang in the slides or in the emails when they release it. It's a good link. I suggest you try it. It'll show you that you can incorporate the one-person corporation and the 2 to 4 incorporators na corporation more easily online na rin. No? So part of our going digital initiatives nga. Anyway, next slide, please. So this is the company registration system. This is separate from what I was just mentioning now, one-person corporation registration system. This is our current registration system, which we are in the middle of making a newer one. I won't delve long on this because anyway, on the way on. But this is the current one. I think, if you have incorporated in the last 2 or 3 years, this is more or less the one you've been using. We have the regular lane, the LEAP, which is the lane for express application processing, and then the fast track. Now, the LEAP and fast track are shortcut methods, kumbaga deforma yan, so to make the incorporation a little faster. Now, in theory nga, under LEAP and fast track, you could get your incorporation papers within 2 to 3 days dapat. No, but we currently had to suspend it, however, because all the LEAP and fast track required that people would physically go to the SEC, and under IATF guidelines, we're not really allowed to have people keep coming to us, no, physically, because that would have far too many people in one place. So we don't really encourage that at this point. So anyway, we have the regular lane. Once again, you can see that under our website, no, www.sec.gov.ph. So I won't discuss that very much na kasi nga, anyway, it's all on the website. Next slide, please. Now, I'd like to point out that we issued SEC notice June 3, 2020. Now, this is pursuant to the IATF resolutions in relation to the COVID-19. So we issued very many COVID-19 related issuances, one of which is this notice. Now, it refers to the online applications of the regular lane of the CRS that I mentioned earlier under the company registration and monitoring department. So it's an online, we have that online platform application where you now submit through emails to assist the public in your day-to-day transactions, now business transactions with us. So you can check the link. It's there at the website. It's there at the slide. No, you can check the link containing the list of email addresses of assigned divisions of the CRMD, because in case you have different requirements and different needs, you go to different, you send emails to different groups as may be needed within CRMD. Now, admittedly, there's still some manual operations, but they're very limited now, no, as much as possible. Limited to, for instance, the receipt of proof of payment, release of signed certificate of incorporations, release of orders, and then registration of stock and transfer book. Okay. So I suggest if you have questions or clarifications in relation to any of your transactions, you go through these links as seen in the slide. So, next slide. This is a notice applicable to foundations in particular who were required to file or submit your mandatory disclosure form or MDFs until July 31. No, I believe it's July 31 yata, 2020, not July 15. No? This notice provide the guidance in the filing or submission notarized mandatory disclosure form. Now, what's a mandatory disclosure form? This is essentially a disclosure form where you're supposed to inform the SEC of your beneficial owners, of those who deal with or transact in relation to your foundations. Now, there might be some who might contest and ask us why we're requiring this. I'd like to point out that this was a requirement from FATF, the Financial Action Task Force. So it's an international requirement being required of the government. And then we are implementing that requirement. Because otherwise, if we don't do it, we might be flagged by FATF for anti-money laundering issues. So syempre, we have to follow. So the reason I mentioned this specifically now is because we've gotten some criticism as bakit ba namin pinipilit to for foundations and other affected organizations. Well, the long and short of it is we don't have a choice. Otherwise, we risk jeopardizing the entire economy if we get blacklisted or graylisted kasi by an international agency. But don't worry. We don't intend to do anything with the information. Kumbaga, we don't forget we are a government repository. We are required naman talaga din to hold some of these information with us, and of course, subject to all the applicable data privacy provisions of law. Next slide, please. Next is we issued a memorandum circular. We issued notices in relation to different extension of deadlines. What do I mean by extension deadlines? Now, every year, we have reportorial requirements required for corporations and foundations, among others. For instance, the annual audited financial statement, your general information sheet, things like that. We've issued very many different deadlines na extend because we understand and we perfectly know that things are hard now. No? Very hard for you to go around, very hard for you to send things in. So that's why we have all this. I suggest you look lang at the website again. You check our notice dated August 11. It's very recent. We just approved it lang talaga recently. Essentially, we're saying that hard copies now are required and to be submitted at the end of September na. So we've kept moving the deadline. Now, why are we still required to have hard copies? Why are you still required to submit to us hard copies? Because we are not the government repository of all this data. It's not BIR that holds on to your audited financial statements. It's not the general information. It's not the GSIS or any of these other agencies. We are the repository. So the SEC is mandated by law to hold on to all this data for the general public. And in a regime and a regulatory framework where information should be available to everyone. By law, kasi we're required to have a transparent information system in relation to all the disclosures of companies, so that an investor can invest intelligently. So because of that mandate, because of that very specific mandate, we are required for it to have hard copies. No, otherwise we run the risk of having soft copies that can be easily doctored. So sadly, we can't forego the physical requirement. We've had meetings with with the Secretary of Finance, with some of the other senior officials about this. If we could do away with such requirements, make it simpler, meaning soft copy lang sana. And what we could come up with is you submit it initially soft copy via email, para you've already submitted, and then later on yung hard copies, no? And we keep extending it na lang. So So long and short of it, you're still required to submit hard copies to us. Please check the notice na lang. But yun nga, we keep extending the deadline. We originally had deadlines for it, mga May pa yata, and we kept pushing it back, because we are perfectly aware of the difficulties under ECQ, MECQ, GCQ. Okay, next slide, please. Here, more on the extension of deadlines. No, I suggest nga you look at that particular notice na lang, no, online. You can see it all in our website naman. No, it should be bannered now because we just approved this the other day at our last NWAC meeting. Okay. Next slide, please. This is SEC Memorandum Circular 10. It just talks about how emails can be sent to us, how documents can be sent to us electronically. That's fairly simple. A PDF, electronic signature in accordance with electronic signature, electronic evidence law. So that's fairly simple. Next slide, please. Here, this is something I want to highlight. This is a Memorandum Circular number 16. We just recently issued this. This talks about authentication for incorporation. So before, if you recall, if you're going to incorporate a company, you notarize the documents physically and then submit it to us, right? Now we are allowing authentication. We are foregoing notarization requirements. Okay, so you can submit. You can incorporate by submitting incorporation papers to articles of incorporation without it being notarized. Pwede na. No? Why? To simplify things, to make it easier so that you can do it na lang online among other things and then later on yung hard copy. So, kumbaga, one less thing for you to do. You don't have to go to your notary na. And I'm sorry to my fellow lawyers, no, I know we are removing one form of revenue for you as a notary, but the sign of the times is very clear. We have to move forward. Even the e-notarial rules of the Supreme Court kasi still require particular setups for that, which might make things difficult for incorporators. So we're trying to do away with that. Now, in case you're not comfortable with authentication lang, we still allow acknowledgement before a notary public. But if you do incorporation pala abroad, if you do your documents abroad, you're still required to do it under the apostille convention, meaning you still have to go through a notary in our embassies. No? So that's a separate thing entirely. But the general rule is, my point is, you can now do it through authentication, which makes it easier, obviously. No? So I hope this encourages people to incorporate more and then start more business because it's much easier now. Okay. Next slide, please. Here, this is a proposed circular. We've not yet implemented this. This is subject to approval pa, but we have already uploaded this on the website for comments and for feedback, no, from the general public. Essentially, this draft circular, it's for corporations, partnerships, associations, and individuals. You're supposed now to create and designate email account addresses and cell phone transactions for for transactions with the commission. What does this mean? This means that moving forward, no, in an attempt for us to try and avoid people coming na talaga physically to the SEC premises all over the country, you are now required to submit an email address and a cell phone number and an alternate email address and an alternate cell phone number. Why? Because that is how now we will transact with you moving forward. That is our intention. No? So kumbaga digital na talaga as much as possible. This jives and this aligns with our president's statement earlier during the SONA that he wants a more digital government, a more doing things more through electronic communication. So you can look at the provisions in the draft circular and send us feedback na lang as well. No, but essentially you're supposed to just submit now within a particular number of days if you are an old corporation, and if you're currently incorporating now, then that's part of the requirements now: the cell phone number and the email address. Very specific na po yun. Now, I just like to emphasize that for those who are incorporating and those who have custody of the email or the cell phone number, please make sure whoever does have custody of it is someone authorized by the corporation foundation. Why? Because we will hold you to it. That is the intention. No? Transactions will be done through that email address, through that phone number. Okay, so to make things faster, to make things easier as well for everyone. And kumbaga, whatever transaction or emails we will do through that particular designated email address or phone number will be considered official communications, official transactions. Okay. Now, what if you don't have email? What if, very off chance, what if you don't have internet where your principal office is? That's unlikely, but in the case you don't have that, I think that's in the next slide. No, in case you don't have that, what we provide is that you're supposed to submit to us na lang a certification giving us a cellular phone number instead, and then you certify and inform us that there's an inability to create an email account due to the fact that the area where the principal office address is located supposedly has no internet access. That's rare, I think, kasi very, very rare po yan, I would think, no? But at least we have a provision for that. But we also require you to tell us and submit the official email address and alternate email address within 30 days from the time the area where the principal office is located finally gains access to the internet. So, kumbaga, it's still digital na talaga as much as possible. Okay? So next slide. I think we are now on the third topic. No, I apologize. I'm taking longer than I expected. The third topic now talks about the incorporation requirements for foundations, which I think is of interest to most of you. No? So if ever you incorporate, these are the requirements on screen. Now, this is for foundations because I was informed that most schools are foundations. No, I think ang setup niyo po, yung current corporate setup niyo. No? So where do you go? You go to the SEC CRMD, the one I mentioned earlier, the Company Registration and Monitoring Department, because that handles incorporation of companies in the Philippines. So to register for a foundation, you can visit our online CRS through the website again of the SEC. Then fill in the details that are there and upload the necessary requirements. What are some of these requirements? So the cover name reservation, corporate name reservation, the cover sheet, your proposed articles of incorporation and bylaws, your joint affidavit of two incorporators to change corporate names, not required, of course, if it's already stated in the articles of incorporation. Then the list of members certified by the corporate secretary, not unless, once again, it's the articles of incorporation. List of the names of contributors or donors and the amounts contributed or donated, and has to be certified by the treasurer. Then the notarized bank certificate of bank deposit of the contribution. Then statement of willingness to allow the commission to conduct an audit. Sorry, because don't forget you are one of our regulatees. Then your registration of the membership book. There's a minimal fee. Then payment of your filing fee. There's a certain amount there. I just don't remember. It's 2,000 plus pesos po yata. No? And then additional requirements, if applicable, depending on the kind of school. Because some of you might have, depending on this kind of foundation. Because sometimes there are requirements for endorsement or clearances from other government agencies. Okay. Next slide. So allow me to show you a sample certificate of incorporation for a foundation for your reference. That's what a certificate of incorporation would look like. Next slide is a sample form of a certificate of bank deposit. So that's what it looks like. So once again, as I mentioned earlier, Allan would be open. I would be open to let Allan give you copies of the forms of this PDF in PDF form. So at least you can see you have a guide now how to go through this, if ever. Or better yet, you hire a lawyer to do it. No? Mga kumpanyero, I'm still giving you work, if ever. Kahit wala nang notarization, I would recommend you still have a lawyer to do your incorporation papers para sigurado po. Or an accountant pala, lest I be accused of favoritism to my panieros. No? Sorry, where am I? Sample for notarized bank certificate. Next slide is a sample form of a statement of willingness. So you can see that's a statement of willingness to be audited. And then this once again, this applies through foundations. Next slide, please, would be incorporation of non-stock corporations. So once again, you still go through the Company Registration and Monitoring Department. It handles the registration of non-stock, non-profit corporations. So now we're at corporations now, but non-stock, non-profit. And these are the requirements as listed there. Once again, corporate name reservation, cover sheet, articles of incorporation, joint affidavit, list of your members, list of names of contributors, registration of the membership book, you pay the filing fee, and once again, additional requirements. So it's all there. No? Next slide, please. I'll show you some more of the sample forms now. Certificate of incorporation for a non-stock, non-profit. Okay. And then the rest of the other forms kanina can also be applicable. So it's basically the same. Now, I'd just like to show you some statistics if you don't mind. No? As of August 2020, next slide nga pala. There are a total of roughly 26,942 newly registered corporations that are engaged in the education industry. Okay. 365 of which are registered as a foundation, 349 of which are registered as non-stock corporations, while this is Sorry, my numbers are outdated. Anyway, the numbers there, these are the outdated. My notes are outdated. My notes are outdated. Anyway, it's on screen. The numbers are the current numbers there. They're the current statistics in relation to the education industry. I apologize, no. I've been giving speeches every day, so my notes na nakakagulo na. But anyway, those are just some of the numbers for your information. I apologize for my mistake. Just for your general information lang naman. So as you can see, most of you are registered as non-stock corporations, yung mga educational institutions, and most of you are registered in particular as foundations as well. All right. Thank you. Next slide, please. So let's talk about now some of the post-incorporation requirements. So you've incorporated, whether as a foundation or as a non-stock corporation. What are some of the requirements now that you have that you're supposed to submit? Now, Section 177 of the Revised Corporation Code provides that you are required to submit yearly as a corporation your annual financial statement, which is the annual audited financial statement, and it should be audited by a CPA. Now, please note, however, that if the total assets or total liabilities of the corporation are less than 600,000 pesos, then the financial statement should be certified under oath by the corporation's treasurer or CFO na lang. And of course, the general information sheet. Now, what's the information that's in the general information sheet? Who are the stockholders, who are, or in the case of a foundation, who are the members, things like that. No? And then their addresses, things like that. You're supposed to submit this yearly, okay? Don't forget. Now, for corporations vested with public interest, they're required to submit their director trustee compensation report and their director trustee appraisal or performance report, and the standards or criteria to use to assess each of these directors or trustees. These documents are separate from the AFS and GIS. Now, question: is a school or a foundation considered a corporation vested with public interest? The answer to that is currently not clear yet, because we are still discussing that within the SEC. There is a committee headed by a general counsel studying this and determining whether or not schools and foundations would be considered a corporation vested with public interest. Now, corporations vested with public interest generally are those like pawn shops, banks, companies under the SRC, which are provided for. Sorry, SRC is the Securities Regulation Code. So I personally have no position yet as to whether or not schools should be considered corporation vested with public interest. Now, there are some advocates saying yes because of the fact that it handles the educational of people. But my worry, of course, is that if we go in that direction, we might be unduly burdening naman our regulators. So I'm. But anyway, let's see. I have yet to see the recommendation, because how it works pala within the commission is the committee will submit and create and submit to us, the commission, their recommendations, and then kami mga commissioners, we will decide and then rule upon whether or not we will apply that recommendation. So it's still early days yet as to that particular requirement. No? Now, please note that failure to submit those repertorial requirements for three consecutive times within 5 years may result in delinquency status, which can lead to penalties and later on the possibility of being revoked. Although, as a matter of policy, we try not to revoke in light of the legislative intent na perpetual na nga ang corporations. But of course, for really horrible violators, we'll be left with no choice to revoke. Sorry, next slide. This slide gives you a better view of what repertorial requirements to submit for monitoring requirements by the SEC annually. So once again, naman for stock corporations are required to submit your latest due financial statements. For financial statements amount of 600,000 or more, you need to comply with the following as provided below: a duly stamp received by the BR and SEC in a 2-year comparative format, audited by a CPA, accredited by the Board of Accountancy or by us at the SEC. You also have to contain the other requirements: a statement of management's responsibility, auditor's report, balance sheet, income statement. If not for profit pala, a statement of activities, not necessarily income statement. Then statement of cash flow, statement of changes in equity as applicable, notes to your FS, and then a supplemental written statement of the external auditor. Now, for those with less than 600,000 total asset, as I mentioned earlier, the financial statement should be certified under oath by your corporation's treasurer or chief financial officer or fiscal officer. For non-stock corporation naman, with total assets of liability 600,000 or more, it should be audited and must comply with the requirements of stock corporations. All right. And as I mentioned earlier, corporations also need to submit the following: your latest due GIS, certificate of incorporation, articles of incorporation, latest approved amended articles of or question, if any, and your stock and transfer membership book. Now, if this seems unduly complicated, this is where I pitch again for my compañeros and our friends in the accounting industry. Hire them na lang, no, to assist you as to that. They can be a big help to advise you. But in the event you want to do it by yourself, then you can look at the website, our website once again, and it's the listing is there. Or you could get this PDF and then this slides in PDF and then compare it and then use it as a guide for yourself. My last part of the discussion, next slide please, will focus on the post-incorporation requirements of foundations. Now, foundations is not handled by the CRMD, the Company Registry Monitoring Department. They're being handled by the other department I mentioned earlier, the Corporate Governance and Finance Department. No, they handle the monitoring of foundation, and they have a checklist of requirements as well, which is adopted from the revised Securities Regulation Code. No? So the requirements, allow me to enumerate it lang very quickly. Once again, the general information sheet, the audited financial statements, and then on top of that, the CGFD, the Company Corporate Governance Finance Department, also reviews documents such as the notarized sworn statement, Annex 68C, schedules for stock nonprofit corporation, then NSPO Form 1, and then which attaches dapat the affidavit of willingness to be audited by the SEC, then the schedule of receipts or incomes or your sources of funds. Okay. Now, for those with annual contributions higher or donations, high of 500,000 or more, you also have to submit your schedule of contributions and donations, NSPO Form 4, scheduled application of funds, NSPO Form 5, your certificate of existence of program and activity, COEP. This helps indicate that the foundation is legitimate. I'm sure that's not a problem for our members here, but I'm just letting you know these are the requirements. And then that COEP issued by heads or the officers of the private institution or the actual beneficiaries. So this is proof, again, to show that the foundation is operating, and operating correctly. And of course, we need a location map of the exact principal office address. It has to be signed under oath. That helps us because the SEC also conducts spot checks. Well, not right now because of COVID, but before we have visitorial powers na kasi under the revised corporation code. So we do conduct spot checks, audits. Now we are as part of our regulatory functions. Next slide will just show you some sample forms just so you see it. So this next slide shows a sample template of what I mentioned earlier, NSPO Form 1. It also enumerates the other requirements, which I will show in the later slides. Next slide, sample form of the affidavit of willingness to be audited by the commission. This is different from the slide or affidavit required for incorporation of a foundation. Okay, so separate affidavit form. Next slide, please. This is the schedule of receipts of income or sources of funds other than contributions to donations. Then next is a form for the schedule of contributions. Then next is the schedule of application of funds. Anyway, it's fairly simple. Then the last would be the certificate of non-receipt of donations by foundations from government agencies. Okay, so these are the forms, So I guess with that, I'm done. Next slide. Having discussed all of this, I hope you were able to gain some insights on the SEC, on our Bible, the Revised Corporation Code. You also see some of the corporate reportorial requirements that we're requiring of you as schools and as foundations, in our capacity as one of your regulators. Now, in case you have further questions that I won't be able to answer, because I understand we only also have a limited time for the Q&A, you can feel free to email my office, OC Lee, that stands for Office of Commissioner Lee at sec.gov.ph. And I would be happy to try and answer your question. I can't promise that I can answer all emails. I do get a fair volume of emails, but I can promise that someone will read it, whether my staff, my lawyers, or myself. We try our best not to be responsive to the general public as part of our advocacy and part of our functions as commissioners of the SEC. So with that, allow me to end my discussion by saying this is the chair's favorite motto. It's easy at SEC. Thank you and good morning. Back to you, Allan.
With Cleves Publishing Incorporated, we assure you as our partners to be there throughout the journey. We are with you in every step of the way. Technology is continuously evolving, and Cleves is riding with it. From print to digital, Cleves got you covered with the products that we offer. Spearheading Cleves products are the Clevelets, an e-learning portal for teachers only, and the Leveraging Education, Augmenting the Future, or LEAF, for student-teacher access. For teachers, administrators, and school owners, we have the CLEAFS Shares. It is perfect for you in maneuvering fast-paced demands of the education field as we collaborate in creating a balanced amalgam of theories, pedagogies, and practices inside and outside of the realm of the learning environments. Reimagine, reinforce, recognize, to make quality education through a variety of lectures, trainings, and webinars in aid of instruction, classroom management, and institution management. These offerings are perfect responses. In connection to CLEAFS Shares, to provide service beyond sales, CLEAFS also has the CLEAFS Cares for its partner mission schools in providing them with capacity building focused branding or rebranding the institution inside and out. It also practices reimagining various school scenarios and responses to the needs of the time, reinforcing school climate and culture through different webinars conducted among institution partners and in recognizing the value of each stakeholder in the success of value-laden instruction delivery. Another product of CLEAFS is the CLEAFS Assist. This offering features a 24/7 hotline for technical assistance in the use and maintenance of the CLEAFlets and LEAF. Almost everyone in the academe can benefit from this, from the teachers, admins, and school owners to the students and parents. CLEAFS Assists aims to provide an assistance response team to address immediate technical concerns while ensuring the users the full utilization of the CLEAFlets and LEAF. It also offers visits with partners to address offline concerns when needed. We ensure quality service delivered through this hotline assistance to our partners always. And lastly, CLEAFS Thinks. Together with the partners, we provide them with external consultations for present and future research agenda, accreditation certification, and imaging one. CLEAFS thinks that with a client in full swing, it is redirecting the winds within their institutions. CLEAFS Thinks is for teachers, administrators, school owners, students, parents, and even extended service communities and collaborative partner agencies. Through innovative designs, proactive responses, and reconfigured goals, established institutions are on the verge of the fourth going to the fifth industrial revolution. Strong definitive vision is what's needed in remaining relevant and competent in this world. And this is what CLEAFS is all about.
Welcome to the question and answer portion of this webinar. Thank you, Commissioner Kelvin. That was a comprehensive discussion on the SEC. We appreciate it so much. Actually, I personally learned a lot today. Before we proceed, may I remind you again that you will receive the certificate of attendance only upon completion of the evaluation form. We will also send to you the link to the sites that Commissioner Lee mentioned including his presentation. Again, please note that this will be available until 2 p.m. after the webinar. So you accomplish the evaluation form until 2 p.m. so that you get your certificates and the presentation. We encourage you to answer the evaluation form so that we get to know your email address and details. We will be sending them to you within the next 3 to 5 days. So let us begin the question and answer portion. Most of these are really greetings. We have more than 300 comments here. Maraming salamat po sa presentation. Very nice presentation. There's this comment from Sister Jing Villador. Sabi niya, these are clear guidelines for schools and foundations. So, salamat po. Ito naman si Ms. Maricordesu. Sabi niya, excellent speaker. Excellent speaker si Commissioner. Before I ask my question, he already answered it. So, merong psychic power si Commissioner. Nabasa niya yung comments. And then we have members of the board who are here. Si Monsi Mike, good morning from Cabanatuan. And then we can proceed to some of these questions. Perpetual Corporation is a very progressive development, Commissioner, in corporate regulation. What made the Commission decide to finally allow it?
Sorry, Allan, to be clear, no, it wasn't the commission that decided, but we did. It was before my time when it was being moved in Congress, no, but it was actually the initiative of the chair, of our current chairperson, when they were coordinating with Congress. And if I may name a particular senator, in effect, the sort of father of the revised corporation code is Senator Frank Drilon. So he's very proud of that piece of legislation. And the whole point of making it perpetual is we're trying to align with other governments. Sorry, not other governments. Sorry, other countries. No, the setup ng other countries na perpetual na. And the whole point is to minimize paperwork later on. Kasi ang nangyayari before kasi when you're near the 50-year lifespan, patapos na, you have to submit suddenly a whole new set of incorporation papers to extend nga. No? So it was cumbersome, to say the least. In fact, when I was in Malacanang, there was one GOCC, without naming na lang, no, there was one GOCC, government-owned controlled corporation, muntik na dissolve because of that issue. Kasi nga it was nearing the end of its lifespan, and we were having difficulty getting all the corporate requirements for amendment and extension of life at the time. Kasi nga it's a government-owned and controlled corporations. Iba yung setup ng mga shareholdings eh. So with this provision, things like that are now avoided. So talagang game changer. Eh. We're very happy nga it's there. No? Also, my wife hates the fact that I always joke about it. Eh. So yung love is not for everything. So yun.
Ito naman kay Mr. Frank Anthony Pataweg. Of course, we already responded to this. May request for a personal copy of the webinar today. So we will be sending to you, Mr. Frank Pataweg, kasama ng certificate mo. Kasi sabi niya, this is something that they can really read for our school and for our congregations as a newly established Third Order Franciscan community. So we will help you with that by sending to you the document. Many of the schools are severely affected by the pandemic, Commissioner. If they decide to temporarily close their institution for a year, what would be the implications in terms of their corporate identity? Meron bang ganong implication? Kung magsara sila ngayon, tapos magbubukas ulit sila next year? O ano ba yung mga requirements kung gagawin nila yun?
Well, kung magsira kayo, you might have to check with DepEd or CHED, no? Kasi doon yata papasok yung ibang requirements na on relation to that. On our end, if you are unable to operate naman, then you inform us. Syempre, you're gonna have to inform us through the GIS next year, yung General Information Sheet, and then yung audited financial statements na medyo alanganin nga yung earnings nyo, no, in that last year. No, you can also inform us by sending us a letter na informing that we are constrained to shut down yung mga ganon for a year. But in terms of strict requirements before you, when you say shutdown, I'm presuming you mean na parang temporary close lang. Hindi talaga yung shutdown na closure
because
talaga.
Of this year's,
kasi kung closure talaga, because of
enrollment.
this year lang. Kasi kung closure talaga, that's a completely separate no, liquidation, ano na yan, yung mga ganon na papasok na. There's a completely different set of laws that will apply. But if temporary closure, we don't really deal with that, I think, at our end. You would probably have more requirements nga sa mayor, city hall side, and sa CHED or DepEd as may be applicable. And BIR pala, sorry. You're gonna have to check separately with BIR. Completely ibang-iba yung requirements ng BIR. I would caution you to check there pala. More there and the mayor's city hall than us. No? Mas hindi namin pinapansin yan whether you operate or not for a year. No, not quite so much our, I think.
Okay. Ito related dun sa question na yan. Si John Paul Dumasian, sabi niya, Attorney, ano pong gagawin sa non-profit organization na 3 years nang walang function? Gagawin doon.
Well, if 3 years no then sooner or later makikita yan ng mga monitoring people namin, no? And then you might be flagged for violations, show cause kayo kung walang, kasi if you're not operating, that implies to me na hindi kayo nagsasubmit ng excuse me ng mga documentation to the SEC. So mafa-flag yan sooner or later. But if you don't want to proceed, then we have a checklist of requirements for closure, yung permanent closure and liquidation of a company, corporation, whether foundation or not. You can go through that process. No? But once again, with us, kasi it's not such a problem yung mga closure liquidation processes, kasi mostly the problems are in agencies where you have to pay yung taxes. So talagang BIR might be more your problem. And City Hall, kasi syempre may mga ibang set of requirements nga sila for that.
Okay. So we still have these comments. Ito kay Ma'am Grace Angchampok. Thank you so much, CAP, for this great opportunity to be part of this virtual webinar, and to the speaker, Commissioner Kelvin Lee, for such an informative and interesting discussion. So we also agree with you, Ms. Grace.
Thank you.
From this Ofelia Servida, transparency is really something that not only the government but also the private institutions has to work on. But yeah, we agree with you. We all have to be transparent.
Yes. Can I mention lang, Allan, pala, as a side comment, no? As part of the transparency requirements nga ng revised corporation code, some companies that are vested with public interest are now required nga to submit their compensation packages and reports of yung mga directors and trustees and senior corporate officers nila. So which I find to be very innovative, no, and fair din, kasi for instance, you could check online with COA or the ombudsman, and you could see my salary and how much I'm earning, and yung mga sa SALN, di ba, yung mga ganun.
Yeah.
So it's only fair, I think, for these larger corporations vested with public interest, makita na rin natin yung compensation ng mga directors and mga board members nila and senior corporate officers. So and that aligns with the whole transparency initiative. Nagiging transparent na rin. Even private companies are being encouraged, some forced, no, so to speak, to be transparent.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Ayun, my comment lang.
Now from this from Ma'am Elizabeth Montserrat, sabi niya, during this time of the pandemic, BOT are canceled. Are they still required to submit the yearly corporate meeting report? Thank you.
You're supposed to inform us. If you did not hold a meeting pa, you can inform us, but you can notify us, no? Through siguro email initially. Just check with the applicable email address in the website. Inform us that you were unable to hold or conduct a meeting. No? And then later on, you can coordinate as to when you can finally have the meeting later on. But general rule is inform us, notify us.
Okay. Ito, I do not know if you'll kung kayong makakasagot dito. Are donations taxed?
BIR yan. Sorry. BIR na yan. As much as I'm not a tax lawyer even when I was in private sector, but even when I was in private sector and a lawyer, I was always hesitant to deal with tax issues, kasi completely separate set of rules. So I would rather not. I'll refer you na lang to tax lawyer separately in case after this.
Ito naman si Mr. Gilbert Espinosa. I do not know this, if you can respond to this. What do you think are the excellent practices in governance that promotes transparency? Can you give us examples?
That's a pretty broad on governance. No? Siguro if you dig deeper a little, you could drill down a little. Mas kaya kong isagot yan. But off the top of my head, some of the good initiatives in governments, in terms of government now, is the I don't know if you're familiar with the Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
Freedom of Information Office, FOI office. It's being run by my friend in Malacanang now, by Assistant Secretary Chris Ablan. That is a governance initiative because the point of freedom of information na set up based on the executive order ni Presidente is that you submit sorry, you can submit a request for information now of any government agency, from any government agency on the executive side, and the government agency, if the request is valid, can inform you, no? So of the information, give you the information you're requesting. So that's innovative kasi before wala namang ganun na requirement eh. In effect, anytime pasok sa government parang sikreto na eh. So under that FOI regulation and under that FOI implementation, it has been done very well. Actually, I recommend someone Google that in the future in case you are interested in that. No, look it up. And then if you get to a chance to talk to ASEC Chris Ablan, tell him I sent you. Okay siya, mabait yun, magaling yung mamang yun. No? Very solid government worker yun.
Okay. Ito, hindi ko alam kung na-discuss mo kahit ito kaya mo itong sagutin, no? Yung election ng board officers, kasi nga, karamihan naka-zoom na yung election, no? Anong normal na process na ginagawa ninyo dun sa, or what do you recommend? The usual process that can be done using virtual election?
Yeah. You use nga we don't mandate a particular way of voting or election, no? What we do allow lang under the SEC memorandum circular I mentioned earlier, 6 yata, no? Is that you are allowed to do it online and you are supposed to create your own internal guidelines or internal procedure for such elections and how to hold it, no, electronically. Kasi we don't want naman kasi to handcuff yung mga ibang corporations on how you do it. So I'm not endorsing it, but I have heard that other corporations, what they do is they do it through Google. Meron silang parang setup sa Google Meet.
Quick survey.
Magiging private pa rin.
Yes,
quick survey.
yes.
May mga ganun-ganun para meron pa rin privacy considerations.
Okay.
I'm not endorsing it because I personally haven't tried it. I've just heard about it. Parang ang point ko lang is that we don't want to force the corporation to do it a certain way. So long as it is valid, it is legitimate, and so long as you follow, wala kang violate na laws, no, of government, then we'll leave you to it how you do it. No? Whether you want to do it viva voce by vote ba na parang you or by piece of paper that you submit later, it's really up to you. Based on your whatever internal guidelines the corporation or foundation comes up with.
Okay. Ito naman kay
Thank
Mr. Orenzo Angeles. Pwede po bang i-register ang faculty club under the public school system?
Faculty club?
Or faculty
as a
association?
non-stock, as a non-stock. Well, if you're not incorporating it as a government institution, pwede naman, no? I just like to point out that by law, I think you're not allowed to unionize though, ha? Baka mamaya it is an intention to create a foundation as a union. Parang there are, if I recall correctly, there's a labor law provision na medyo bawal yata yung to you're allowed to self-organize as a club, syempre as an organization, but as an actual union, there might be some issues there. No?
Okay.
If I recall.
This is from our board member, the chair of our Superintendent's Commission, si Monsignor Mike Federacion. Sabi niya, Commissioner, could you please provide us basic duties of trustee that we may have probably neglected? Are we obliged to engage in continuing learning like the professionals who undergo the CPD?
For board members kasi, we have mga corporate governance, well, not really requirements. We encourage you to undergo yung mga corporate governance na trainings, no? But usually the ones who are required to do such trainings are those who are in publicly listed corporations because of the corporate governance requirements in there, no, under yung isang department. And in case you do go in that direction, I recommend yung mga seminars ng ICD, Institute of Corporate Directors. They're not bad. We hold some corporate governance seminars as well, no, to teach a board member how to conduct himself during board meetings, how to duties and responsibilities niya. No, but for smaller corporations, I don't recall a specific requirement. I'll have to check, no. But ang alam ko kasi we mandate that more specifically for yung mga corporations vested with public interest and yung publicly listed corporations, the ones who are on the stock exchange. Yun talaga required for the board directors there. Higher threshold kasi. But for smaller corporations, siguro it might be unduly burdensome din kasi. No? But I want to point out, Allan, that the direction is there, so na medyo everyone has to start learning and yung mga corporate governance na mga matters na rin talaga. So even if right now we're not specifically mandating it for particular kinds of corporations, you might be better off starting to learn on your own and taking classes, learning about it. There's a wealth of information naman online, no, in relation to corporate governance na mga din. So I would
Okay.
suggest you going in that direction na rin. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I think those are the questions that we received today. Most of the ones we have are congratulatory comments. Maraming salamat po. We learned a lot. At pasalamat sa CEAP for having this webinar. So, ito meron pa yata humabol.
Yeah, sige.
You said that the board should meet every month. Our bylaws state that we meet 4 times. Are we violating the law?
Well, unless, if I recall correctly, unless otherwise provided by the bylaws naman. However, I actually encourage and I would prefer na yung monthly. Kasi you can't really govern a corporation or a foundation properly if you just do it 4 times a year. Parang medyo mahirap yun, ah. It is hard to maintain proper administration if you do it only minimal amount of times like that. You're really better off doing it monthly, please. No, I encourage you to do it monthly, please. Thank you.
Ano ba? Parang iba kasi question, parang pang-BIR. An institution like a foundation, private school, is it fair that they still ask for miscellaneous fee despite I think this is not for the commissioner.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't touch that. No, see Sir Billy of the BIR is a friend. We worked together a lot before when we were before we were both appointed in our respective offices. But even ako nahihiya ako lumapit sa kanya about anything sa BIR kasi medyo takot ako sa tax laws. Tax laws are so hard. Honestly, tax laws are so hard. So many people have failed becoming a lawyer because taxation subject yun sa bar. So talagang mahirap. So I'm scared din naman. Kaya parang ako allergic na rin. When you mentioned it's a tax thing, sige, out na ako.
Taxation ka siguro doon.
I beg your pardon? Sorry?
Ito kay Sir Noel Ivory. Thank you, Commissioner Kelvin Lee, for the very comprehensive update and informative webinar on this. This will serve us on our trail later.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's the questions we've received thus far. So we'll just send to you if there are further questions.
Yeah, please. I'd be happy to take them. No?
Indeed, the task of running institutions brings with it the required corporate governance standards. As Catholic schools and Catholic school administrators, it is very important that we understand that there are requirements that help us professionalize our institutions. And this professionalization lead us to have excellent communities learning. So again, please be informed that you will receive the certificate of attendance only upon completion of the evaluation form. The link has been posted here in the description of this video. And before we end, we would like to thank CLIPS Publishing Incorporated and Raxo City, our web host, for being our reliable partners for this webinar. Please do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So press the red button again if you have not pressed that. Ay baka ma-unsubscribe kayo if you press that again. So on behalf of our President, Father Elmer Gidison and the CEAP Board of Trustees, salamat at muli tayo magkita sa susunod na linggo sa isa pang webinar na pinamagatang Formation from a Distance, Campus Ministry and Social Apostolate in the New Normal. Muli, maraming salamat, Commissioner Kelvin. This is Allan Arellano. Mabuhay.